The mountain blizzard buried the valley in a single night, but inside the buried railcar, it could not reach them. Inside, Robert Vance sat by the stove, listening. His daughter Emily slept, warmth holding the steel walls at bay. Then the pounding came, heavy, desperate blows against the iron door that made the whole shell shudder.
Vance, I know you are in there. Please, I can't feel my hands.
Of all the men in this valley, why did it have to be him?
The records. Vance, I signed the statement. It's your car, it's always been yours. Just let me in.
His hand rested on the latch. Outside, a man who had tried to destroy him was freezing to death.
Emily doesn't need to know what kind of man he is. Not tonight.
And inside that buried steel box, a story waited, of a joke that became a home, and a winter that would test them all. 6 months earlier, Robert Vance had lost his job, dragged a condemned railcar home, and bet everything on an impossible idea.
Vance, the railroad's cutting back. Turn in your key, you are done.
18 years. He says it like I was a day laborer passing through.
He walked the 3 miles home, with a layoff slip burning in his coat pocket.
Dad? You are home early. What's wrong?
They cut me loose, Em. The whole section gang. No warning, no severance.
Then what do we do? The mortgage is already 2 months late.
A week later, Robert walked back into the yard with a different kind of question.
That condemned boxcar on the spur. If it's just scrap to you, I'll haul it off your hands.
The yardmaster shrugged and stamped a release. The car was his, if he could move it.
If steel can keep freight dry, it can keep my daughter warm. That's a start.
The boxcar rumbled through Main Street behind an old tractor, and the town came out to watch.
Let them stare. They don't know what it feels like to have nothing left but steel.
A man on the sidewalk shouted, "You plan on living in that scrap heap, Vance?" Laughter followed him down the road. Robert didn't flinch. He kept the tractor aimed toward the hillside, his jaw set like iron. By the time he parked the boxcar at the base of the hillside, Emily was already there, holding 2 shovels.
I still think you are crazy, Dad, but I'd rather dig than lose the house.
We're not losing anything. We're building something new, out of sight, out of the cold.
He pulled open the heavy steel door. Inside, the boxcar was a cavern of dirty steel and dead air.
This is going to be our home? It smells like old grain and rust.
Let them laugh. We'll see who's warm when the snow falls.
Weeks turned into months. Robert and Emily packed earth over the roof until the boxcar vanished into the slope, leaving only a steel door and a small window. Emily wedged straw into every gap between steel and frozen ground. When they lit the first fire inside, the heat didn't leak. The buried steel shell held it like a flask. The rumor reached Kenneth Holt 2 days later.
He actually moved that scrap. I'll find a way to make him regret it.
He arrived at the hillside with a deputy, the law clipped to his belt. Robert opened the steel door and stood in the frame, arms crossed.
That car is stolen company property. Step aside, or I'll have it hauled off your land.
You condemned it as scrap. The yardmaster signed it over. It's mine.
The deputy's hand drifted to his belt, and the wind between them turned brittle. The standoff broke without gunfire, but Kenneth Holt's threat lingered like frost in a wound. Robert went to the district railway office, searching for the condemnation order that would prove his ownership.
I need the file on car number 722. It was released to me months ago. I have the yard stamp.
The clerk refused, stating the records were sealed pending an internal review that could take months.
Sealed. Holt's doing. He's cutting off every branch before I can reach it.
When Robert returned, the first deep freeze of autumn had already gripped the valley.
The Watsons' pipes burst this morning. They're freezing, and we're in a buried boxcar warmer than their house.
That evening, shifting firewood, Emily's fingers scraped rough letters carved into the wooden wall.
Dad, there's a name in the wood, T. Vance. And a date, 1922.
Thomas Vance. My father. He helped lay the tracks for this line. He might have built this very car.
Kenneth brought his case to the town council, demanding the buried boxcar be condemned as a public hazard.
Vance buried a steel coffin on his land. If it collapses, the county will bear the blame.
That coffin kept my daughter warm when the Watsons' pipes burst. It's insulated with 3 feet of earth, safer than any frame house.
It has no permit, no inspection, and it's stolen railway property. Ask the yard office.
The council, uncertain, adjourned without a ruling, promising to revisit after the winter. That night, the first great storm of winter buried the roads and sealed the valley shut. Inside the buried railcar, the storm was only a muffled whisper against the earth-packed walls.
If the council sides with Holt, they'll tear it down, won't they?
They won't. We've got truth, and my father's name carved into these walls. This car will outlast them all.
But the storm was only beginning, and Kenneth Holt had one more play to make. The blizzard hit like a fist of ice. The temperature dropped 40 degrees in an hour. Robert dragged another armful of split wood inside, snow crusted to his beard. The first knock came at dusk. Old Mrs. Dempsey, her face white with frost, held out trembling hands. Within minutes, 3 more families stumbled inside, clutching quilts and infants.
Put the children near the stove. We'll need more blankets and more soup.
At the Holt house, the cold was winning. Frost crept across the wallpaper, and the pipes had long gone silent.
We are not going to Vance's buried coffin. I won't give him the satisfaction.
His wife's eyes were hollow. She had already called a neighbor, learning the boxcar was the only warm place left.
Even Holt's family is freezing. But I can't force him to swallow his pride.
As night closed in, the buried railcar held 17 souls. Across the valley, Kenneth Holt sat alone in the dark, his breath clouding before his face. Around midnight, a frozen pipe burst in the cellar, flooding the room with ice water and snuffing out the last whisper of heat. His wife appeared in the doorway, children huddled behind her. Her voice was calm but final. The house was dead. She was leaving. She bundled them in every blanket and stepped into the blizzard without looking back. Kenneth stood frozen, watching them vanish.
She's right, but I won't give Vance the satisfaction of my surrender.
An hour later, his hands were so numb, he couldn't feel the cold metal of the stove. His feet had gone wooden.
Pride won't keep me alive. My children need a father more than I need to be right.
He forced his frozen fingers around the door handle and lurched into the screaming white. Through the swirling snow, a faint orange light glowed on the hillside. The buried railcar's window, half a mile away. He leaned into the wind, each step a battle against the snow that swallowed his legs to the knee. The distance should have taken minutes. It stretched into something without measure. His eyes locked on the only warmth left in the world. Inside the buried railcar, every breath stopped at the heavy pounding against the steel door. Through the small window, Robert caught a shape hunched against the snow. Kenneth Holt, ice crusted to his face.
Vance, I was wrong about everything. Just let me in the records. I'll sign whatever you want.
6 months ago, he stood there with a deputy. Now he's just a freezing man who finally knows he was wrong.
Emily stepped beside him, her face pale. The whole boxcar had gone still, watching the man who wanted them homeless.
Dad, he's got a wife and little boy. They'd want him to live.
Stand back.
He threw the bolt. The door burst inward, and Kenneth Holt collapsed onto the frozen floor, snow sweeping over him. Robert caught him under the arms, dragged him clear, and slammed the door shut against the howling dark.
The blizzard had trapped them together. Whatever the records said, that truth would have to wait until morning.
Robert and Emily dragged his shivering form into a corner. Emily pulled a dry wool blanket over him before he could protest. Through half-closed eyes, Kenneth saw his wife and young son huddled near the stove. They had fled here first, and now they were safe.
You need to eat.
Kenneth stared at the bowl, then turned his face to the wall. He would not take charity from the man he had tried to destroy. The blizzard trapped them for 3 days. The boxcar became a cramped village, meals shared, wood chopped, children watched. Kenneth took no part.
Your dad's a brave man coming through that storm.
The boys' laughter cut through the heavy silence. Kenneth, From his corner, heard it like a foreign song. The stove's orange heart kept beating, indifferent to grudges.
They should hate me. But the boy laughs like none of it happened.
On the third evening, the wind finally dropped. Robert, stoking the fire, caught Kenneth watching him. He gave a single nod, then returned to the wood. The day after the wind stilled, the refugees trickled home across the frozen earth. Emily stayed to clear the debris. Her fingers found a loose panel behind the straw. From the hidden slot, she drew a small leather journal, the cover cracked with age.
Dad, you have to see this. Grandfather kept a log of every car he built.
The first page read, the 14th of March, 1922, framed car 722, with heavy steel. This one will outlast me.
He wrote about this very car. M. said it was built strong enough to shelter a family.
He built it for us, didn't he? Even back then, he was thinking of the people who'd come after.
He built it on the line he laid. Our land sits on Vance ground, deeper than I ever understood.
The buried railcar had always been more than a joke. It was a promise from a grandfather who never met the winter his family would face. And in the corner, Kenneth Holt watched the exchange and realized he had tried to erase something that was never his to take. The morning sky was a blinding blue. The storm had swallowed the valley, but the buried railcar's chimney still breathed a thin wisp of smoke. Kenneth's house stood frozen and flooded. He had nowhere to return, and Robert did not ask him to leave. Without a word, Kenneth took the axe from the woodpile outside and began splitting logs, his movements stiff but steady.
He's trying, Dad. Maybe he's not what we thought.
That evening, Emily sat near Kenneth with a tin cup. She told him about the journal and the grandfather who built this car.
This boxcar was meant for a family. Maybe it was meant for more than just ours.
Kenneth listened, his gaze fixed on the floor. He offered no words, but his silence had lost its bite.
I've spent years tearing down what others built. I don't know how to rebuild.
Robert poured coffee and handed a cup to Kenneth. Their eyes met for a second longer than before. The buried railcar had become a place where even the hardest man could begin to thaw. 2 days after the thaw, a courier reached the buried railcar with a sealed envelope from the county records office. Robert tore it open. The top line read, File 722, officially condemned and sold as scrap metal to Robert Vance, April 1953.
That's it, Dad. We have proof. The boxcar belongs to us, officially.
This paper gives me the power to crush Holt in front of the whole town.
Why aren't you smiling? We've been waiting for this for months.
Because crushing him won't rebuild his house or feed his children.
Through the frosty pane, Kenneth stacked split wood, his back bent, unaware. Robert folded the document slowly, his jaw tight, and slid it inside his coat.
I'll give him the truth, but not like this. Not as a weapon.
He knew he held the legal truth, but also a man's future. The right moment had not yet come. That evening, Robert found Kenneth sitting alone on the fallen log, the valley's white silence stretching before them. Without a word, he pulled the folded paper from his coat and held it out.
You've got the condemnation order.
I've had it for 2 days.
I knew. The car was yours. The day the yardmaster signed it. I just couldn't stand it. I was so afraid of being nothing after the layoffs that I had to tear you down.
You can still make it right. Tell the council the truth. Clear my name, and I won't bury you.
I'll do it. Just don't let my children see what I became.
Robert extended his hand. Kenneth, after a long moment, took it. The council would hear the truth, but the hardest part had already passed between them.
My house is gone. If you'll let me, I want to stay on your land and work for my keep.
You can stay, but you'll work harder than anyone. And when the council meets, tell them the whole truth, not to shame you, but to clear my name.
I will. I'll tell them exactly what I did.
They walked the frozen road side by side. The town hall stood at the end of the street, pale against the snow. The hall was already filling. Whispers died as Kenneth stepped inside. Robert close behind. Kenneth paused at the front of the room. His hands trembled at his sides.
One truth at a time. That's all it takes.
The council members sat at the long oak table, watching waiting. Kenneth drew a shaking breath and faced the room. The silence was complete.
I have something to say, something I should have said months ago. That boxcar was never stolen. I knew the yardmaster signed it over to Vance before I ever came to his land. I lied.
He unfolded the condemnation order with shaking hands and read it aloud for the whole hall.
File 722. Condemned and sold as scrap metal to Robert Vance. It was his from the start.
The council chambers filled with murmurs. Some faces showed anger, others relief. The council chairman took the document, examined the seal, and brought down his stamp. The ruling was unanimous. Legal ownership of the boxcar and the land beneath it belonged to Robert Vance. Robert accepted the paper with a quiet nod. He did not smile or seek Kenneth's eye.
It's over, but a piece of paper doesn't heal a man.
The crowd dispersed slowly. Some neighbors shook Robert's hand. Others avoided his gaze. Kenneth stood alone in the emptying room, his confession still hanging in the air like frost. Robert found Kenneth standing alone outside the town hall. He motioned, and they walked the frozen road without needing words. At the buried railcar, the family who had stayed behind welcomed Kenneth with quiet nods and a cup of coffee.
So it's really ours? No more fighting?
No more fighting. The law says it's ours. But the truth was carved into the walls long before any judge spoke.
When the snow finally began to recede in the warm spring sun, Emily explored the old overgrown tracks behind the hillside. She found a rusted spike first, then a wooden sign, half buried in the wet snow. Vance Line.
Dad, come quick. There's a sign with our name on the old tracks.
Vance Line. Your grandfather, Thomas, built this spur. He named it after our family, before I was born.
They traced the faint curve of the old rails upward into the hillside and realized the path led exactly toward the buried boxcar. The steel shell sat there, smoke trailing, as if it had been waiting for them all along. Inside the warm boxcar, Emily spread the journal and the Rusty Vance Line sign on the crude table.
Grandfather's diary says car 722 was built strong enough for the home line. He meant this line.
I found the old survey map in the council archives. This spur runs across our land, right into the hillside.
The faded line on the map cut through their property and stopped exactly where the buried boxcar stood.
So the boxcar was never just scrap. He built it for this spot. He planned for us to be here.
He left us a home he never got to live in, and we stumbled into it without knowing.
Like a flash, the image of a young Thomas Vance carving his name into the wood passed through her mind.
He didn't just build a railroad, Dad. He built our future.
Robert touched the carving on the wall. The name T. Vance was more than a mark. It was the compass that had guided them home. The buried railcar had saved them. Yes, but it had done something greater. It had closed a circle begun 40 years before. In 1922, a young Thomas Vance stood on this hillside with a spike maul in his hand, the iron of the rail line fresh beneath his feet. He carved his name inside the very boxcar he had framed, believing one day it might shelter his son.
He saw this moment, Dad. He carved his name so we would find our way back.
He built more than rails. He built a promise that his family would survive whatever winter came.
Robert pulled Emily into an embrace, and for a long moment, the past and present held together inside the steel shell. In the doorway, Kenneth Holt stood frozen. He had come to steal this boxcar, and instead had to watch a legacy he could never own.
I tried to destroy this, and it was never mine to touch. I'm sorry.
The buried railcar had become more than a shelter. It had become a healing ground where an enemy could begin again. The joke he had buried in the hillside was never a joke. It was a promise kept. By the time snow melted and green shoots broke through the hillside, the valley had not forgotten. But it had begun to heal. Neighbors arrived with lumber and nails, not from duty, but because the buried railcar had become a symbol of what they all needed. Emily placed the Vance Line sign above the steel door. The carved name inside seemed to echo it like an answer.
Now it's home. And it always was.
They raised walls and roof together. Old enemies, new friends, sweat and sawdust mixing with memory.
I never thought I'd build something instead of tear it down. But here we are.
Sometimes it takes a storm to show us what we're meant to build.
The boxcar, once buried and hidden, became the living heart of a house that no storm could touch. The Vance Line sign above the door was not just a name. It was the map that had brought them home, and the joke the town had laughed at became the truth they all now gathered around. On a still summer morning, Emily sat by the boxcar window and opened her journal.
The rails ended at our doorstep.
She looked through the small window at the Vance Line sign and the hillside now blooming with wild grass. A heavy step sounded on the wooden floor. Robert ducked through the low doorway, an armload of split wood cradled against his chest.
Still writing about those old rails.
Someone has to remember how we got here.
For a moment, they just looked at each other, not as survivors of a blizzard, but as keepers of a home built from steel, earth, and a grandfather's stubborn hope. Emily closed the journal. The pen rested beside it, the page drying. Outside, the chimney curled a ribbon of smoke into the clear sky. The rails were silent, but they had done their work. In time, the joke faded. Only the steel remained, carrying the name carved inside it. The valley lay green and still under the summer sun. The old rail line was barely visible, a faint scar through the grass. The buried railcar's window glowed, a square of warm light embedded in the hillside. A hawk circled high above, its shadow rippling over the roof. The chimney barely breathed. Inside that steel heart, a family had found its center. Robert, Emily, Kenneth. They were no longer rivals or refugees. They were neighbors who had weathered every season together. The Vance Line sign stood over the door, facing the old tracks his grandfather had laid 4 decades before. And sometimes, when the wind was right, you could almost hear the rails humming beneath the earth, a low, steady song that had never really stopped. The joke the town had laughed at had borne the weight of a blizzard, an enemy, and a family history buried in the soil. Now, only the steel remained with a name carved inside, and a home built from second chances. And the silence of the mountain returned, holding it all.